And we're live. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Wolf. Happy Wednesday night. I am super stoked to be chatting Bitcoin today. We've got Alex Crognale, professional soccer player, paid on Bitcoin a long time ago, which was one of the coolest stories. We were in a Bitcoin space. He jumped up, I looked at his bio, and I was like, wait a minute, I've seen this guy before. I've heard this story before. And so I was like, okay, we were on a panel with a bunch of people. I was like, I'm not going to be able to dive deeper into this story. But I was like, hey, let's jump on a podcast. Alex, welcome to the show. It's great to have you, man. Happy Wednesday.
Kate, thanks for having me. Before the show, we were talking. I think you are the busiest guy on Bitcoin Twitter. There's always a Wolf Crypto, or I shouldn't even say that Wolf Crypto, now Wolf Bitcoin, which I think was a brilliant rebrand by you guys. But yeah, you guys are doing some awesome stuff, and look forward to chatting with you today.
Absolutely. So you're coming from San Antonio FC. I'd love to actually hear a little bit. We'll start with the Bitcoin stuff, and then we'll kind of dive a bit deeper into your career, your mindset around why you did it, and stuff like that. And then kind of the repercussions, the people who around you who were seeing, you're like, wait a minute, why is this guy so much richer than all of us? He got paid in some coin thing. But tell us a little bit about like the Bitcoin thesis, and then I'd love for you to kind of rope in the soccer angle, and because you basically mixed your career with investing together, which a lot of people aren't able to do.
Yeah. It was during COVID when I first found the Bitcoin rabbit hole, and after they shut the economy down and they decided to print, I think $8 trillion in a matter of months. I started to do my research, and I realized that like this is not a sustainable path, and there's got to be a better option for me as an individual because I work hard for the money I make, and don't want to leave my future purchasing power up to the government who is in control of the printing press. So, I found Bitcoin, and in 2020 was the first time that I purchased Bitcoin. I actually bought Litecoin. Litecoin was the first first like entrance into crypto. I saw you posted a tweet about Litecoin today, and thankfully I pivoted not too long after, where I got my life position in 2020, and then started buying Bitcoin. And once I got involved, I discovered Bitcoin Twitter, started listening to podcasts, and I have an economics background. I studied econ at the University of Maryland in college, so I understand. I'm not an economist by any stretch of the imagination, but I understand these concepts, and I was able to grasp a lot of these people who, the Anthony Pomplianos of the world, who was really the guy that I was listening to when I first got into Bitcoin, and that he spoke about the economy and about this problem with the fiat system. It just clicked for me. And so the more I learned, the more I realized I was short Bitcoin, and the more I wanted to own, and the more I wanted to learn. And it just kind of, that's when my journey started. And, you mentioned me getting paid in Bitcoin. The following year in 2021, I decided to take another step further. I was buying Bitcoin all the time, and so once I learned that you could take salary in Bitcoin, I found these guys, Bitwage, and their crypto payroll service that they offered, and I was able to start taking a percentage of every paycheck direct in Bitcoin.
This is very similar to like the Gemini credit card, which a lot of people make fun of because they're like, there's maybe better rewards somewhere else. I'm like, yeah, but people say that, but the thing is, there's not really any way to beat you getting direct Bitcoin. I'm like, I don't even know what I do with the points half the time. Half of them go to waste. And people say you rack up all these points, but then I spend like, a crap ton of them to buy like a snack on the airplane. They're like stealing like 5,000 miles from me for like a bag of Cheetos. And I'm like, no, I'd rather just get direct Bitcoin, even if it's like $50 a month or something like that. But you're able to put your salary in there, which is like, I imagine either the top or one of the top income sources you have. And so you're able to incorporate the Bitcoin side of things. And so tell me a little bit about backgrounds, your professional career, how long you've been playing, what team you're at, what position you are. So for people who don't know, I also was my pathway before Wolf Bitcoin was my desire was to be in your position. And I hopefully would have been accepting money in Bitcoin as well. Got to college, and I was playing at a school, D2 school in South Carolina. And I remember I'd blown my ACL the year before. So I lost every scholarship opportunity I had for D1. And I was like, okay, well, that's not going to be, this is rough. I can maybe work D2 for a little bit and then maybe work my way into a bigger school once I earn their trust back. But they basically looked at me like a liability once I blew out my knee. And they were probably correct, because about a year later, I blew up my other knee. So probably was a good idea. And I just remember the competition was absolutely insane. The competition at college was like 6,000 times higher than I thought it was going to be. And I realized about a week in that there was no path to professional soccer for me. So huge props to you for making it to pro soccer and then now change your life with Bitcoin. Tell me a little bit about it.
Yeah, well, the beautiful thing about the world is, you have that experience. I have my experience, and now here we are talking
Yeah.
Bitcoin a decade later. I I mentioned I went to school at the University of Maryland, played 4 years there as a Terp, and then this is my ninth season as a professional down in Texas, playing for San Antonio FC. I played 3 years in the MLS, and then have played the last 6 years in the USL Championship, which is the
Yeah.
second division on the U.S. soccer pyramid. So, yeah, I'm here in San Antonio. I'm a back. You know, you might not be able to see it here, but I'm 6'5". So I'm a tall player, one of the taller guys in the league, and I use that height to my advantage. And I defend the goal and I stack sats, man. It
Let's
really
go.
is that simple. Life doesn't need to be complicated, and once you find Bitcoin, you can focus on your craft. You can stack Bitcoin and enjoy your life, and that's what I've been trying to do.
That's beautiful. Is there any, have you noticed like intricacies with soccer and Bitcoin? I feel like Bitcoin waves, it like works its way into every aspect of my life. But people talk about football as an art form, and I believe that. You watch any video of some of the top people in the world, and you're like, yeah, that's art. That is artwork at some level, and it's a beautiful game. There's a reason it's number one in the world, whether or not the Americans buy it or not. It is. It's the number one, and there's nothing close. American football's cool, and baseball's whatever, basketball's cool. I don't know. Maybe it's because we played. Maybe it's because I'm biased there, but I've always enjoyed soccer, watching it as well. But did you notice any intricacies there?
For sure. I mean, look, Bitcoin is based on proof of work, and
Mm.
I think there are very few careers that are where you see proof of work shown, like being a professional athlete. I mean, the training hours, the determination, the fighting through adversity, and just the grind, day after day, week after week, year after year, to train, to perform. It really is the ultimate proof of work, and it's similar to being a Bitcoin hodler. I mean, people say we got lucky. It's easy. You just buy it. You don't have to do anything.
Mm.
It's not a productive asset, but you buy it and then go online and you hear all of the negativity surrounding Bitcoin, all of the people who talk about it's going to get banned, they're going to shut the internet off, all of these
Shut
things
the
that
internet
people
off is
say
insane.
are going to kill Bitcoin. If you haven't done your research and you don't have conviction, and maybe you're borrowing conviction from an account you follow on Twitter,
Mm.
it's not easy, right? But once you get to a place where uh, you know you've you've done the work, you have the knowledge, and you know what it is that you hold. It's really a peaceful life. But I will say that the feeling that I don't have enough coin has never faded at all. Despite the asset performing well, and despite it changing my life for the better. So I guess maybe that's just an anxiety that us Bitcoiners will live with forever, regardless of how high the price goes.
It probably should be like, actually, that makes me think of something. I remember I didn't grow up religious at all, and I ended up converting later on in my life a couple years ago, and going to Christianity, and I noticed that one of the teachings they talk about is like, they call it like Christian guilt or something. I'd never heard of this because I didn't grow up religious, but people are like, there's church guilt and there's Christian guilt and Catholic guilt, or all these words, and I was like, isn't that good though? Like, if you don't have the guilt, you'll just go and do things without any repercussion. You won't care, and you'll turn into a terrible person. And with that, what you're talking about, like, we have this feeling of I don't have enough, but it should be that way. It's a scarce asset. It's worth something.
Mm.
Every aspect of it makes sense at any price point. People are saying, wait a minute, this is worth a considerable amount of my net worth. Let me ape into this thing. Like, that's a strange reaction to have at every level for Bitcoin at $1, $10. We saw people on Reddit saying the exact same thing we talk about, where people are like, oh my God. And it's like $120,000, but they had the same idea at $10, which is why I think Bitcoin stands out. There's other cryptos out there. Maybe they do something. I can't discount Litecoin. I can't discount the proof of work hard cap supply coins, because I don't know if in the future there will be a run. But I can say against when you pair it against Bitcoin, it's really hard to make the argument for them. But it just looks like every time I look at Bitcoin, I'm like, it just stands out. It just stands out from the rest of the pack.
And it just makes sense, right? Like humans have never had a a monetary asset that um, that I saw a comment pop up that
Yeah,
distracted
that was
me.
Emp. He's
But
one of the main hosts of Wolf
we
Financial. He's awesome.
oh great. So yeah, humans have never had a monetary asset that we can exchange freely, not only with people in our neighborhood, in our town, but across the globe in a permissionless, trustless system. And that is also a store of value, right? That can be verified instantly. And we've lived in a system where we as citizens have always had to work hard to get a second job, to do more for the same amount of goods. And I think now people are starting to wake up to this idea. Um, and the reason is because the money is manipulated. And unless you are one of the closest um, people or entities to the printing press, you don't benefit from this money printing. And so you have to hold assets as an individual today living in the United States. There is simply no other option. Um, and it's a big reason why I come on shows like this and talk about Bitcoin so much, because I don't not only believe that it's going to benefit me and my family and future generations, but I think it's going to be, I want to help other people as well, because there's wouldn't feel good if I did amazing with Bitcoin, but all of my friends and the people around me were really struggling. Like that's
Yeah.
not a future I want to live in. And where I believe Bitcoin is going, I want to bring people along with me. I want to help educate people before, BlackRock and Saylor and all of these institutions scoop up all the coins. Because
Mhm.
every time, Saylor does one of his Sunday orange dots and he makes a buy, those 100 Bitcoin, 1,000 Bitcoin,
Yeah.
that's removing 100 or 1,000 whole coiners from ever existing. Because unless something catastrophic happens, those coins are not coming back online. And and so I think it's super important to talk about Bitcoin, because we've never been taught money in school. I was lucky to have a personal finance class in high school, but
Mhm.
that's not common for many others. And most people just go through life. They earn money, they spend money, they think $1 equals $1, and that's just the way things are. And you start investing in assets when you're already rich, right?
Yeah.
Like if you don't have money, I'm gonna start investing, and that's a really flawed approach. And I think we need to speak more about money, more about investing, because the only way to give yourself a fruitful future is to put in the work and store your wealth today, right?
Yeah.
So yeah.
It's actually interesting because you mentioned with the proof of work, like it's like almost like a life lesson. You're like, I mean, I liked what you said there. I also agree with you. It's the first time I've invested in something, and the first thing I want to do is bring other people with me. I've got a whole team behind me, separate from Wolf, just for my own stuff. And every single one of them is investing in Bitcoin. I increased all of their paychecks, and I said, "This is the percentage you will throw in Bitcoin minimum. It's not a raise for you. This is your investment, and this will go into Bitcoin." And I was like, "You have to start." I was like, "It just doesn't matter. I don't care if you can't afford to. You can't afford not to." I believe this doesn't matter if you're in America or any other country. And I don't feel that way when I buy, like, insert stock. It just doesn't, it's not the same. It's not the same thesis. It's not the same idea. And that's really powerful, actually, the way you put that. I love that idea. Have you noticed with other people that they also follow suit? Maybe we're just super nerdy or something like that. Like you got other professional soccer players in the team. You've got your managers, your coaches, your agents. You got all sorts of people you're connected with. And you made this big post about it when you originally like went live with it. I guess, did you tell people immediately? Did you wait a year? And what was the reactions amongst these people that you're close with in your families and circles and stuff?
Yeah, well, the guys in my locker room were, they didn't really get it. A few of them were like, "Dude, you're a legend. Like, this is crazy, but like you're a legend." My brothers, who obviously just want the best for me, were like, "Bro, this is so risky. Like your
Mm,
whole identity or your brand, your reputation is like attached to this digital coin where you have no control over it, right?"
mm,
And obviously, I knew what I was doing when I announced this and when I decided to start taking paychecks in Bitcoin. Like, but what I didn't expect was, when I first announced it, it was October, no, September, October of 2021. And
Mm.
the tweet, I had like 2,000 followers, and the tweet got over 1 million impressions.
Jeez.
And like the Bitcoin community was crazy. I think my follower account doubled like in a week. And I was at that point, I was kind of like, holy shit! Like the Bitcoiners, like that community is as strong as they come. And I think it's great because it keeps you accountable. Like if you wander off and start buying shit coins, or start doing something scammy, or eating unhealthy foods, or you name it, Bitcoiners talk about it, let you know when they disagree with whatever it is that you're doing. And it helps you kind of keep on path, because
Mm.
the, the more people I speak to in Bitcoin, the more I realize, like, these are the smart people. Like, some of the people who Bitcoin are just extremely smart individuals, and I'm like, clear, yes, we arrived at the same conclusion. We're like, we should own this Bitcoin thing. Everyone has an expertise in something other than Bitcoin, and they bring that expertise to the Bitcoin community. And I think it's just a really cool way for people to collaborate and to learn, and to support each other. Unlike other investments, where
Yeah.
once it gets to a certain place, people are dumping it, and they're leaving. And of course, that happens in Bitcoin, but the longer time goes on, the base of hodlers that are just not selling just continues to
Yeah.
grow.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's not even only that, the buyers increase. And I talked about this. I went on a podcast at Yahoo Finance, and I was like, "Wow, you guys are interested in Bitcoin. This is huge, great." And I mentioned, I was like, "Look, it's they call it like the sell to someone dumber theory or something like that in investing, right? Like you buy it just enough to where someone else is getting screwed, and you sell them your bag." And I was like, and I said this, I was like, "Hey, listen, this feels awkward to say on your show because you're traditional finance. You are literally exactly what I'm talking about. But you can say that about stocks. You can say that about most of your investments. You can't say that about Bitcoin. It's not dumber people buying it. It's people who are just as smart or smarter than you who just found out later. I was like, it's not a
Mhm.
secret that people bought it at $10, $100, 1,000, 10,000, and 100, and there are sovereigns buying it at 110 for all the same thesis. And I was like, it's not that they're dumb; they're realizing this is true. And I was like, that's an entirely different way of thinking, and it's because of the asset itself. It's because of the qualities of the asset. And with especially this big run in Bitcoin, this big run in gold, these anti-monies that some of the biggest hedge fund managers in the world, like Ray Dalio and others, have said, "Hey, you need to start diversifying here. Every other asset in the stock market is based in the dollar. You're basically walking up a staircase, but the staircase is an escalator, and the escalator is going down. They're like, you're limiting yourself." And I was just like, man, okay. So the very least, I have to like diversify like at least 50%. I can't just go 100% stocks and just do the S&P, because that's almost like too risky. And so it completely changes the way you think. And I see Emp in here, who is the traditional finance folks inside of things. He played also college football. And so he probably was excited to see talking to another sports athlete here. So shout out to you, Emp. Hopefully we can orange pill you along this conversation. But yeah, I'd love to, I don't know if you have any thoughts on what I just said there about, but I guess it changes everything about the way you think. And I don't know if you agree with the concept that it's smarter people every time, or at least as smart as you, rather than just dumber people buying your bag.
Yeah, well, I mean, you hear stories of people, even the smartest people, who made mistakes, who heard about Bitcoin, dismissed it, and then they finally came around. Like, I mean, even the Michael Saylors, right, where
Yeah, that's true. That's
he
right.
dismisses it, says it's whatever the tweet he said, and then he comes around and smash buys 250 million. But I was I have a TradFi brokerage account with a big, I'm not going to name the institution, but I was speaking to advisor recently, and he mentioned now they have more freedom to offer Bitcoin products in the accounts. And he said likely, the conversations they've had, likely next year you'll be able to buy Bitcoin itself in your brokerage account. And
Mm.
obviously that's going to be custodied by the the institution, the whatever it, the E-Trade or Morgan Stanley, the Fidelities of the world. But that's still another on-ramp to the asset. And I don't recommend that's how people buy their Bitcoin. I think you should buy the asset and put it in cold storage, self-custody it, Um, if you can do multi-sig, I recommend it.
Yep.
And but for our parents, our grandparents, people who aren't tech savvy, or people who like the idea of Bitcoin, but they like the idea of protection in their portfolio, maybe not the idea of having a bearer instrument asset that they custody and they control all the keys. Like some people think like, okay, that's like prepper type financial personal finance, and I'm going to stay away from that, which is fine. But I think what we're seeing is there's just new on ramps, new entrants continuing to come into the asset. And the conversations that we have today, the FUD that comes online, that that people talk about today, you can find all of that being discussed in a 2011 Reddit forum
Yeah.
by early Bitcoiners. Like
Yep.
none of this stuff is new, and the way that they predicted the future is truly incredible, because it was just a few guys on a Reddit forum using their there weren't even there weren't hardware wallets. Like they had to
Yeah.
I don't know, write down the seed phrase. Like the Bitcoin that we know today did not exist back then. And I'm sure in 20 years, we're gonna tell our kids about, writing down our seed phrase and then
Yeah.
hiding it under this thing, and doing all of these things where they're gonna, think that's crazy, because I'm sure the user experience just is gonna continue to get better. And it needs to, if we're gonna
Yeah.
onboard, you know, 8 billion people to this asset, or
Agreed.
at least to have the ability to transact in this asset. 8 billion people are not going to hold UTXOs.
And it's honestly important that that's possible, because on the other end of the spectrum, you got all the bad stuff that's also getting easier of access. Like if you are a man today trying to get you're trying to get your shit in order, and now we have freaking Sam Altman's like, oh, we're going to totally have erotica AIs and robots. We're going to be pumping those out. And you're like, well, if you don't have that under your control, you are cooked as a young man, because you're not going to be able to avoid that. We have basically every state is now considering or has already passed like weed, and so you're like, okay, well, it is, you can think what you want to if it's good or bad for weed, but now access is easier. So for people who can't handle it, now they have a problem of like, man, I really don't want to do weed, I don't want to smoke, my life is better without it, but I can just walk down the street. There's no like barriers anymore. It's so easy to use. So it's like, it's almost like we need the offset of things that we know are good. Hard money, sound money. This changes things, just fixes problems. This needs to be easier for people to use. And it's interesting because across the Bitcoin board, I get all sorts of opinions. Like I have people say they hate the IBIT opportunity because it shouldn't even be on the board. And I'm like, well, I don't know what to think about it, because you're right. If you get into IBIT, you're not really holding Bitcoin. You're probably going to get screwed at some point. But at the same time, it's like, maybe that opens the door to eventually becoming someone who buys Bitcoin, which is how I got in. I bought some of the Bitcoin miners at first. I was buying Bitcoin on Robinhood at first, and eventually, slowly over time, I realized, hold on, let me get some of this Bitcoin off, and then I start to learn about stuff. But I did need to go that route. Like, what are your thoughts on all this?
I think if you believe that Bitcoin is going to stay this cypherpunk thing that people use, and the banks stay away from it, and it stays to the original ethos, I think it's super naive, right? Like, of
Mm,
course, Bitcoin is going to be used by banks. Like, of course, they're going to allow you to trade it in your brokerage account. Like, of course, they're going to allow you to borrow against it or have a mortgage in Bitcoin. Like, all of
yeah,
these things are coming, and it's just the natural like adoption curve of Bitcoin. And I think maybe something that I can get on board with is maybe the institutional adoption is happening sooner than people expected. And so, individual adoption of Bitcoin, where I mean, over 50% of Bitcoin is held by individuals, but there isn't a huge percentage of people who own any meaningful amount of Bitcoin.
mm,
And so the fact that the BlackRock of the world are coming in and buying a bunch of Bitcoin, um, well, buying Bitcoin, allowing people to buy Bitcoin in brokerage accounts, Bitcoin, paper Bitcoin, if you whatever you want to say, there you have a claim to that.
yeah.
Um, or I should say, don't have a claim on that Bitcoin, but you get access to the price action. And I think the institutions are
It sounds
coming in
kind of
sooner
ridiculous when we
than
try and explain it, right? You're like, it's you have
I
access of
know.
an IOU to access to the real thing. Yeah,
Yeah, which is all that anyone has ever known, right? Like that's how
yeah,
banks work. So for most people, it's like, oh, that's cool. Like I'll just buy it in Robinhood or wherever where I buy my stocks, and I'm good to go. Um,
Yeah.
but maybe that's happening sooner than the OGs wanted, and they want more people to individuals to adopt before these big players come in. But the fact of the matter is Bitcoin is free and global, and whoever has connection can come on board and buy and transact, and no one's going to stop them. So I think that's just the theory playing out.
Yeah, yeah, I tend to agree there. And by the way, for people who are watching right now, if you haven't already, please do take a second, repost the stream if you are enjoying it. Give Alex up here a follow. I tagged his account right above us, so if you're watching on X, just click literally the blue name, and you'll give him a follow right there. And if you're on YouTube, go right below our faces, and you can go into the description. You can find his stuff there, and definitely do that because you want to give him a follow. We're hopefully going to get him on more spaces. I see MP in here, so we get him on a space. We did get him on a space a week or two ago, and that's how this ended up happening. He sees talents. This guy named Dent. So I want to
Yeah.
talk a little bit about sports, the sports side of things, and talk a bit about how you got into the professional soccer game and also the competition. I mentioned earlier that was my dream to get into your footsteps and to follow your journey. So it's really cool to meet you. And you're playing MLS, which is super awesome. And so I'd love to hear a bit about just the journey as we transition a little bit towards the soccer side of the conversation. Were you surprised, as I was, about the competition level between high school and then college? And like, how did you make that happen? I guess I was doing club. I was trying to go all to these camps. I remember I wish I had
Yeah.
understood the politics side of things a little bit better. I got screwed a couple times, I remember, and I was really, really left with a sour taste in my mouth. I won't say exactly what happened, but they flew in a few people who I didn't think deserved full scholarships. They weren't very good. They couldn't run a mile, but they were the ones starting, and I was mind blown that was even a thing. I thought that hard work was the whole thing, and I remember thinking, man, like I'm not good enough to be judged based on my skills. Like the politics affects me because I'm not good enough at soccer. If I was this good, then I would be able to sort of eclipse the political side because I could just be like, hey, look, I'm scoring 3 goals a game. We're going to take me out. And so I knew I was like, crap, the level is putting me at a disadvantage here. And it puts me in a position where the politics affected me. But there are many people on the team who are far better than me, and they were able to escape that. And so you were able to do the entire thing, go all the way to professional soccer. So I'd love to hear a bit about this journey.
Oh, well, I don't know if it makes you feel better or not, but that happens at every level.
Mm,
It there, the game is not fair. Life is not fair, and the only thing that you have control over is your next training session, right? The
yeah.
way you take care of your body, the work that you're doing, and you just hope you're playing for a coach that believes in you and gives you the opportunity to play. But I grew up in Ohio, in Columbus, Ohio, and I grew up playing for the Columbus Crew Academy team. And
Nice.
so from 14 to 18, I was in a professional environment. I had some opportunities to train with the first team,
Wow.
to play in the reserve league pros, and when I was 16, 17, which was really cool. And then I went off to college, got recruited, and went off to play at University of Maryland. Had a great career there. I was an All-American at Maryland. We
Wow.
won everything except the national championship. But that's sports. And following my 4 years at Maryland, I went back to Columbus and signed with the Crew as a homegrown player.
Wow.
So
Did you
it's
play
a
with
you know
Ethan
it's
Finlay?
yeah. I know
No
Ethan.
way, dude. That's awesome.
Yeah,
I met him
yeah,
when I was like younger. I met him. I like took picture with him, and like my dad, I remember like framed the photo because he came back to Charleston to play a game, and we were like, "Oh my god!" We are like, "That's our guy." So that's awesome to hear.
yeah. In Charleston, every preseason we went to Charleston with the Crew. So it might have been the
Okay.
same year I was there. Who knows? But
Wow.
um, but yeah, Ethan's a great guy. I haven't spoken to him in a few years, so maybe this will encourage me to
Yeah.
give him a call and talk some
Do it.
Bitcoin.
Do
Um,
it.
but but yeah, so then I got the opportunity to play for my town team, right, in front of my friends and family, and which was just such a cool experience.
Wow.
And so, but with sports, things, my I'm super grateful for that opportunity. It was incredible to play in front of friends and family, but I didn't stay there as long as I would have liked, right? So, but after playing for the Crew, I found my way to Birmingham, Alabama, and was there for 5 years playing with the Birmingham Legion. And yeah, that was a great experience. That place, really felt like home, and that's where, my Bitcoin journey began.
Wow.
Down in Birmingham when we were locked down COVID, uh, you couldn't do anything. We weren't sure. They canceled the season. We weren't sure if our league was going to just fold because we didn't know how long the economy was going to be shut down, and these clubs, they couldn't pay us forever, and
Sure.
so the season was shut down. We couldn't spend time with any of the other players because of social distancing, right? So, I was just training my own, and then I'd go home and study the markets.
Yeah.
I was investing and
Wow.
enjoying what. And then after the March crash, was enjoying a lot of successful stock picking, and then of course found Bitcoin, and a year later I realized I did not buy enough of this thing.
Yeah.
And, and since then I've just been thinking about how I can, um, get my hands on more Bitcoin. But back to the soccer, right? We'll stay on the soccer. Um, yeah, love my time there, and now I'm found myself in San Antonio FC, and the boys actually have a game tonight. We're playing in
Oh,
Orange County, and I find myself here in San Antonio because I recently fractured and basically like battered this collarbone, and it required surgery. So I'm doing better now. I'm on the field and training, but still
gotcha.
non-contact. So I got a plate and 10 screws on in this
Jeez.
collarbone, and about a 6-inch scar. So that,
Wow.
unfortunately, as you've experienced, is the downside to professional sports. Is you can't perform and show how you are as a player if you're not on the field. And
Yeah.
so I've been recovering, and using this time to spend more time with family, spend more time in some Bitcoin podcasts, and just
Go.
working my ass off to get back on the field. But
Totally.
it's been a hell of a journey, and don't regret anything. When I think about, like, if I think about my soccer career as a whole, um, I think it's like, it's given me the ability to, like, delay the real life,
Mm,
delay a real job, and spend time doing being involved in Bitcoin and investing off the field while I'm playing. And so it's, um, yeah, I wouldn't trade it for the world. It's been a heck of an experience, and you know we're gonna keep things rolling.
dude, that is very cool. The soccer journey is very that's good. The sports world is a very raw look at the world because it's. I remember, dude, we had preseason starting, and oh my god, you wake up at like 4 in the morning, roll out of bed. You're like, okay, I got, what are they called? 220s or something like that, where you sprint all the way down, go around the goal, all the way back, the Jamaican flags. I was just like, God, this is hell. Like, there's no way to get out of this. You just have to run. Like, there's no way to cut the corner. It's actually mind blowing when you said proof of work, Bitcoin, soccer. I did not think about it like that until I remembered the running sessions, and then like, okay, guys, that was great. Like, great job. We did 15, 20 of them. Suit up. Let's do a scrimmage. No, not, you're not allowed to pass the ball backwards. It's forward only. You're like, dude, why? Like, what is happening? It is so
People
hard.
people underestimate the distance that soccer players cover. In
Yeah.
any given game, it's in 9 minutes we're covering 6 or 7 miles, which might not seem like a lot, but then when you're doing that a couple times a week, and
Oh,
then
yeah.
training 5 days a week, playing on the weekend, and today is a Wednesday game, so my guys that played on Saturday, you know traveled to Tulsa 2 days later, travel
Yeah.
to Orange County, and then they suit up tonight for another game. It really is a grind, and it's not something that, one thing I've learned is talent will only get you so far, right? And if you're not working hard, like, other people are going to outlive you, and when I say outlive you, outlive your career as a player. Like,
Yeah.
there are guys who have been much better than me, who are somewhere working a 9 to 5. I'm not sure what they're doing at this point, but they're no longer playing the game they love because
Wow.
they didn't have the same desire, the same discipline to, you know, week in, week out, month in, month out, just continue to grind, whether things were going well or not well. Like you have to continue to grind, stay available, take any opportunity that comes your way. And it really is like when people think of professional sports, they think it's all sunshine and rainbows, and they see a game and they're like, wow, that's like the greatest thing
Yeah.
ever. And I'm not gonna lie, it's incredible. Like it is a dream come true. And to be able to go, and play in front of 1,000 fans here in San Antonio, and you go see the kids and they want your autograph, they want photos with you. All those things are incredible. But the 6 days of the week, are a grind. And if you're not ready for the grind, then you just won't make it. And the same thing with Bitcoin. If you expect to just buy Bitcoin and it's going to go to 500K over the next year, like you're not going to be happy, because the road that it's going to take to get there, Bitcoin loves to take the road, or the path that hurts the most people
Every
psychologically.
time.
um, every time. And we're seeing that. It's funny, when we scheduled this, Bitcoin was, I don't know, 123, 124, and I was
It
like,
was,
cool.
dude. I know.
you know
I was like,
and,
right, we're
and
gonna be doing this at 150,
yeah,
and
I'm
nope.
like, this is going to be great. I'm like, this is perfect. Like Bitcoin's all time high. I'll get on with Cade.
Yep.
We'll be celebrating. Everyone will be happy. And this morning I'm scrolling
Oh,
through the timeline,
dude.
and people are, I saw one guy, he's like, I'm going to sell the one Bitcoin I have. Like, I'm just tired of waiting around. And it reminds me of the tweets that I've seen from 2014, where like Bitcoin is stabilized at $6 and it's not going anywhere. I'm going to take my cash and move on. It's like these
Yeah.
people just either lack patience, they don't understand what they own, or their expectations are just out of touch with reality. But the only way to win this game is to be patient
Yeah.
and to continue to stack. And you have to let time do its thing. But nothing in life comes easy, and Bitcoin is no different.
Yeah, I agree. I'm very confident that, whether you're someone of prayer or you're someone of spirituality, manifesting stuff, I'm very confident that once you make a move, reality bends around you. So once you've had an internal decision to shift and do something real, and you make an actual concerted effort, things just happen. I can't explain it, but I remember I was just like, I need to access the next gear. I have to level up now. Like, and I can't do it on my own. I literally just like, I've tried everything and I just keep hitting a wall at like B plus. I have to get into A+ territory, and I don't know how to get there. And I was like, I'm willing to do what it takes. And dude, the next 2 weeks were hell. Every single thing went wrong. I'm upset at everything. Like nothing's working. But I found myself, retreating and locking in a lot more. Next thing you know, I've like accessed and been able to harness a little bit of like this rage to just basically like apply it into just momentum and be like, oh wow, now I'm praying more to conserve and sort of like retain my rage and not go punch somebody, but use the rage into a way that's actually helpful. And I'm very confident. I remember before I was religious, it was more spiritual. I'd manifest something, I'd think about it, do things, and then things would just sort of happen along the way. And with Bitcoin, I agree. It's like when you buy it, and you don't know what you're doing. I feel like you get punished, and I feel like that's why it like happens almost, because every time and it's not the case every time, but until you know why you're buying Bitcoin, you got to understand. Like if you watch someone like Peter Schiff or like these people, these like titans of people who are like villains, I guess you could say, in like the Bitcoin space. They're like these villain characters that everyone gets mad at. I don't know why they get mad. I don't even know why they're upset, because I'm like, brother, he owns a gold fund. All he does is buy gold and gold miners. Well, of course he's talking about this with Bitcoin. He's been rage baiting us for 10 years. Like he probably has some Bitcoin. He probably doesn't care that much. It's just not top of his priority. He literally believes in gold. I'm like, gold is almost as good as Bitcoin, except for like every factor that sucks about it. It's so impractical, but there is a real argument for it. But I'm like, you're not going to like get a pro Bitcoin stance from someone like that. So you have to develop this thesis for yourself, and you can watch enough people to eventually get there. But I'm a big believer, like with investing, Bitcoin comes into a different category, because like you don't throw money into Bitcoin and you're not able to hold it through like the cycles because they're so volatile. But it's interesting because Bitcoin gives you those reentries. And this is something my friend Robert said recently. He goes, gold doesn't give you the reentry typically. It just kind of grinds up, and then it's like up, and then it kind of goes up, and then it's up. And then recently we saw this massive pump, and that's when people are like, what is this saying about the markets? There must be a reason that gold is just ripping like this. This is totally unprecedented. And same thing with Bitcoin. There's like a volatility aspect that is just different from the other assets, and it's a separate like game. You've got the stock world, the fiat world. You've got gold based in like the ounces of gold. You've got Bitcoin that can be, based just in 0.1 Bitcoin. You know, 0.1 Bitcoin is 0.1 Bitcoin no matter what. And it's an entirely different conversation, I think. I know we kind of shifted back into Bitcoin. And if I was going to say, if you wanted to comment on that, otherwise I did have something on soccer here that I was going to revert to.
Yeah, well, I mean, the yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, all these worlds, gold, Bitcoin stocks, they're all intertwined, into this global system.
Yeah.
And the fact is just because that we believe that Bitcoin is the best money and we think it should be a $30 trillion asset instead of a $2.5 trillion asset, doesn't mean the rest of the market believes that yet.
Mm.
But the only thing standing in the way is time. So if you're young, like you are, like, I'm 31. I still consider myself young. We have time to continue to
Yeah.
accumulate this asset before the rest of the world wakes up. And so
Yeah.
as long as you look at it through that lens and not from the lens of the crypto guy who wants to buy it and retire this bull market or whatever.
Yeah.
And some people will, but 0.001% will. And those guys who were going to retire were liquid on Friday. So it the game is just hard, right? And
Yeah.
so the only way to win is to have a long-term mindset. And that is literally the ethos of Bitcoin. Like, it's proof of work, it's low time preference, and just continue to stack, stumble, and don't get blown up really. Like,
Mm.
earn more than you spend, and live your life. And then in 5 years, in 10 years, 20 years, you'll be able to enjoy the fruits of your labor. And when I say the fruits of your labor, like, we can go back to the tweet I made. I talked about, in 2022 I took 25% of my salary in Bitcoin, and since then that Bitcoin has about 5x. So that 25% of my salary turned into 125%. And when I take that with the other 75% that I took in fiat, my salary doubled. And I didn't have to ask the employer. I didn't have to ask for a raise. I simply took matters into my own hands and said, look, I see where this asset is going and I want to own more of it. And so I started saving an asset. Now, it's 4 years later. And so the beauty of Bitcoin is you make a decision like that once, and as long as on it is an evergreen, brilliant decision, because Bitcoin continues to appreciate against, your life gets cheaper when you hold Bitcoin. Life gets more expensive when you hold dollars, but
Yeah.
that steak is cheaper every year that you hold Bitcoin. That house that you want is cheaper every year that you hold Bitcoin. Cars are cheaper every year that you hold Bitcoin. And so the more you stack early and the longer you hold, off your fee. And it
Yeah.
really is as simple as that, but it's not going to happen in a straight line. So that's just the way it is.
Yeah, totally. It is. So I want to speak to a few different crowds here. So we've got some younger folks. Somehow our audience is all older than me. I'm basically the youngest in the crew, I would say, in terms of our demographic. We have a lot of 25 to 55, and a lot of those are 35 to 55. And so I was kind of curious. You've given some pretty sage advice from your learnings along the way, from professional soccer, which is 0.001% of Earth. Most people just can't fight through the fires, just physically and mentally to make it. And a combination of different factors. But I'm curious on the learnings you pulled just, along your career, whether it's, from the soccer side of things or the investing side, maybe a mix. And we could be speaking to someone who's like watching you, who's a local from San Antonio, and they're like, heck yeah, Alex is on a podcast, it's on YouTube, it's on X. I'm watching this thing. I want to learn a little bit. And so you've got that crew, the younger folks, maybe the teenage, young 20s kind of thing. They're looking to maybe follow your footsteps, as well as people who are maybe in the older crowd, who are looking in the 40s, 50s. They're looking at your career and they're like, wow, this is cool. Two young men out here. They're taking a lot of their pay in Bitcoin. They're changing their life. Like, I'm curious what kind of things you pulled from your learnings here that we could speak to both crowds a little bit.
Yeah, well, I talk to my teammates about this all the time. A lot of guys now are much younger than me, just starting their careers, starting to make some money, but
Mm-hmm.
they don't have any financial education background. Their parents didn't really talk to them about money, so they're like, they just said I was just planning on saving my money, trying to save it, and I obviously explained to them the reasons why Bitcoin is an important asset to hold. But I think, the way that I think about it is, if you're 35 or younger, or even 40 or younger, I think the single most important asset for you to hold over the next decade is Bitcoin. I think it's going to outperform, every other major asset. Um, and so I think before you start contributing to your 401k, before you start diversifying into real estate or stocks or whatever, I think it's really important to build a base on Bitcoin. And this is what I'm doing. And I had to go at a roundabout way because I started by investing in stocks and I built a stock portfolio. And then I started buying properties in 2018, and so I had a few duplexes in Columbus, and this year I decided like I no longer want to have my wealth like built on debt, because if you think about your balance sheet, when you're a rental property investor, most people are going to mortgage the houses, right? And so even if you put 20% down, the majority of that of that property is owned by the bank through the mortgage. So when you look at your personal balance sheet, it's literally sitting on debt. Like that's the base of it. And look, I don't think that's a problem. I think many people will disagree with me that that's bad. And I had 3% interest rates on these houses, so it was good debt. But the problem was the asset that was, the equity I had in houses was appreciating at 4% a year. And then, every few months I get a call where I need to replace, a leaky faucet, or the shower broke. I got to call a plumber, or I need to replace an AC unit. And that cash flow I thought I was earning just kept getting smaller and smaller. And the only real returns over recent times was the debt down. And so, yeah, I mean, in 30 years or 25 years, after the tenants have paid off the debt, I'll own this house free and clear. Um, but now the property is worth, whatever, $700,000. I own it free and clear. It pays me some cash.
Wow.
It's 25 years older, right? It's continuing to deteriorate, and it's like, is that the asset I want to, pass on to children? Of course not. And so I decided, I need to sell these properties. So earlier in the summer, I sold one of them, and I'm recapitalizing. The way I say it, and I have a few tweets on this. I'm recapitalizing my balance sheet on Bitcoin.
Mm.
So I already sold one of the properties, and actually, this week, Friday, I should close on the other one. And at that
Nice.
point, I'll no longer own any real estate. By the way, I love real estate. Like, when my soccer was over, I could see myself being in the real estate world because I love the game, competition, negotiating, creating relationships. Like I love all that, but I just don't want it to be my personal store of value. Once houses are sold, I will wipe out all of my personal debt, and my net worth will be built on a base of Bitcoin. I see Bitcoin being the pristine collateral of the future, where the way that people have passed down homes from generation to generation, and instead of selling the homes, they're refinancing them and pulling cash out tax free to live their life, upgrade their lifestyle, do all those things. Be Bitcoin's role in the future. And so I think it's super important as a young person to start to think about like, where do you see yourself in the future, and start to build your balance sheet to accommodate for that. And so build a Bitcoin position before focusing on so many of the other things that you can do in personal finance and investing, I think is important. So even if it's a small position, just get yourself off zero. And obviously the most important thing is finding a good paying job, um, spending less than you make, and then put the excess in Bitcoin. And then after Bitcoin do the work for a few years, you can, if you decide you want to start diversifying and taking other risks on, um, you know, whatever stocks, AI stocks, real estate, these things, you can decide that in the future. But Bitcoin is for me, it's the most important, and that's how I'm living my life. And I think that as a young person, if you want to be more well off than all of your peers, all the guys in your college and wherever that are telling you you're stupid for focusing on Bitcoin, like they will be coming to you for advice in a couple years, 5 years, 10 years, but they will be coming. And then I think for for the folks like my parents, I've spoken to them a lot about Bitcoin, and they're Bitcoiners now. I think it all depends on your personal situation and when your retirement is. But if retirement's a decade away, I think it makes sense to put 5%, 10%, 20% of your portfolio into Bitcoin, and keep the other 80% in whatever ETFs or dividend paying, whatever you're invested in. And because that way, regardless of what path Bitcoin takes, you're still secure, but you get the ability to get the outsized returns by having Bitcoin in the portfolio. And I think we're reaching the point where it really doesn't matter what age you are. It makes sense to hold some Bitcoin in your portfolio. I 1%. I don't think is a needle. I think 5% on the low end. It makes sense. You don't need to be 80%. But it's but yeah, I think Bitcoin has reached this point where the Larry Finks of the world are marketing to folks who are not going to ever self custody Bitcoin, and that's fine. But they have the opportunity to participate in this upside and participate in this apex predator asset is slowly eating its way into the 1,000 trillion of global wealth. Oh, you're on mute now.
Sorry, there was a dog barking. I was going to say, I saw Ryan here who just quote tweeted our post. So two of my favorite people with Bitcoin. Well done to both of you. Ryan, appreciate you catching up and seeing the screen, brother. Yeah, Ryan, he's awesome. I think he actually, this is Ryan Ladd. He may have actually been on the same panel we were on earlier this week. He's an awesome dude. It's so cool. You meet the coolest people in the Bitcoin world. You really do. Like, and there's not a knock on the crypto world. There are some very well-meaning, great people I've met in crypto, but there is some difference. I just can't lie. Like, it's just the Bitcoin ethos is different. Kind of how we're saying, like, once you learn about Bitcoin, you want to bring people in the fold, not still buy your bags, but because this is hard money and that this is something that can solve a lot of problems. It's just it's an entirely different thesis, entirely different problem that we're attacking in the Bitcoin world,
And that's why I talk so much about Bitcoin. I mean, it's funny, probably about half of our team now has been stacking Bitcoin. And I think I've onboarded 7 or 8 just this year. Because it's funny, after I announced I was getting paid in Bitcoin a few years ago, that news kind of rippled leads. So, guys, my first week here, I had guys like, oh, are you the Bitcoin guy? And I'm like, yeah, like let's chat, let's, and I love talking about it. Oh, speaking of dogs.
There you go. Look at that.
Yeah. My puppy woke up, is hanging with the neighbor. Hold on.
No worries at all. By the way, while he's doing that, guys, if you haven't already, please repost the stream while he's doing that. Repost the stream. Let people know. Get some more people in here. If you guys have any questions, by the way, definitely drop them in the chat. I know X is not exactly the best place for X chats. We got to fix that one day, Elon. But sorry, please continue.
Yeah. So it's funny. A few weeks ago, I saw someone saying along those lines, where like, you're only promoting Bitcoin because you want someone else to come in and pay a higher price than you and pump your bags. And it kind of got me thinking, like I don't feel like I'm doing that, but let's say I was. And so I went on ChatGPT and I'm like, if I ask a friend or if I convince a friend to buy $5,000 in Bitcoin and start stacking in his journey, how would that benefit me as a holder? And it basically, it said that would add like 0.001 cent to my stack. So it really is, like, the asset is so big now. I don't want to call it mature because it's still small, even though it's $2.5 trillion. But we're not doing this so other people can pump our bags. I think regardless of what happens, like there will be enough individuals who hold wealth in this world that they want to store that wealth in the most pristine collateral in perfect money, which is Bitcoin. And it just might take longer as we talk about it, right? And I think
Yeah.
it's important for us to continue to speak about it. But as the boomers die off, like we are the generation, and if you're lucky enough to receive an inheritance,
Mhm.
if it is full of mutual funds and CDs, I highly doubt you're going to keep them there, right? And so
Yeah.
even if just a little bit find its way into Bitcoin, like we're going to slowly see that adoption start to pick up. But it happens slower than people want, and that's just the way it is. But uh, I truly do speak about Bitcoin and encourage people to own Bitcoin because I want it to help them. Like I've seen how it can help and change my life and help me, think about my future in a different way. I have a daughter; she's 14 months old, and
Wow.
like that, you know, having my first kid, like completely changed the way I think about the world, completely changed the way I think of my role as, as a father, as just a human, right? And it forced me to think so much longer term. And I joke with my wife, I'm like, Elliot, my daughter, she stacked $100 today. Like she's stacking harder than people out there.
Let's
Like,
go.
so of course I'm taking steps to put her in a position where she's, you know, ahead of, you know, she's in a blessed position, in the next 18 years or 20 years, whenever the time comes for her to be of age to make financial decisions. But Bitcoin forces you to think long term, and it
Yeah.
enables you. Really, I shouldn't say it forces you. It enables you to think long term, because if I didn't have Bitcoin, I might be more concerned about, like, okay, how are we going to pay rent next year? Like,
Mm.
maybe my contract's coming up. I don't know how I'm going to maneuver this and that to make sure we have enough money to live. But now we have Bitcoin, and we have, savings in Bitcoin, and I'm able to sleep easy knowing that even if I'm not investing any more dollars, and like the cash we have to spend and just to continue to survive, I know that my savings in Bitcoin is going to allow us to have optionality later in life. And I feel, I'm blessed to be in that position as a Bitcoiner. And I think it really is such a powerful thing. But I see way too many, friends and peers, people I might have went to high school with, and it's really tough for people out there. Like people are dealing with, issues in their day to day lives where they're saddled with credit card debt or loan debt, and they're struggling to find a job. Like it's really tough. So being able to get yourself out of that position and take those dollars that you earn and secure them for the future, I think is super important. And that's why I talk so much about Bitcoin, because I think it's just such an opportunity for our generation, living through literally we're living through one of the fucking craziest times ever.
Yeah.
AI is coming. The fiat experiment is reaching like a murky time where we don't know how much longer this might last. This immaculate conception asset of Bitcoin was discovered, and we're young and beginning to earn money, and we're actually able to buy it and then benefit from it when, because if you're 8 years old today, well, it doesn't really matter how much Bitcoin you have. It's like you don't have much time left, right? So we're lucky enough to have the time to benefit from the future that we believe is coming for Bitcoin. So
Yeah.
it's a fun time to be alive.
Dude, it really is, and I love that, and especially mentioned in terms of long term thinking, and then you mentioned your daughter. I've heard that from many people in the Bitcoin space. Like, well, once you have a kid, everything changes. I've definitely heard that before. So eventually, I will look forward to that. That is also for me. That's the most important thing ever is fatherhood and building a family. I can't think of anything else there is to do at certain points. Like you make money for what? To get girls. To do what? And you're like, eventually you end up with the big build a family and continue the human race. Kind of thing. And so, but it's also so rewarding from what I've heard as well. So, I'm very much looking forward to that. There are many cool things I found in this world, but everyone, from what I've learned, they say nothing compares to a baby. So that's very
Yeah,
exciting. I mean, it's
you
super
got
cool to
plenty
hear
of
too.
time. You got
Yeah.
plenty of time.
Totally. Well, listen, I was gonna say, before we close, gonna get some final thoughts here. So, like, for soccer players out there who are watching this, or football players who are watching this out there in the world, whether they're from another country and they're looking at Bitcoin as a literal saving grace because of their currency maybe is being debanked or debased, and they're watching this and they're like, okay, this guy Alex changed his life. He's playing MLS. He played MLS for a couple of years. He played in a couple of their leagues. This guy gets it. He's been through the ringer. And so if you're speaking to some of those people, and then also just people in the United States or Europe and other places, any thoughts, for the actual athletes out there who are watching this and thinking about maybe this makes sense? Is there a place to go? Like, any resources that you think make sense to watch, or I definitely want them to follow you because that's going to be like, ground zero. But any other resources that come to mind or bits of advice for them?
Yeah, well, you know, the thing about professional athletes, our careers are shorter than just about any other career that exists, right? So we don't have the ability, unless you're, multi-millionaire, NFL, NBA, making big money where a few contracts secures generational, regardless of what you buy with it. I think those guys are a completely different conversation. But there are, there are lower leagues all over the world, and as athletes, we don't have a long career. Like, we have to maximize our earnings while we're playing. I think the benefit is that we're young while we're playing, and so we have time on our side. But we're not able to play for 20 years, for 30 years. So it's super important to be smart with your money, and the money that you earn, you need to preserve as much as you can, for the time when you retire. And so for me, Bitcoin is the most sure thing, as an athlete, for thinking 5, 10 years in the future, without taking too much risk, without needing too much, without needing to know too much about a certain investment or study stocks or doing all these things. I'm like, look, guys, like, because my team will ask me, what about this coin, or what about
Yeah.
this stock, or what about, I want to buy a house, as an investment. And I'm like, look, honestly, you could, like, I've done all those things. You can do all those things. It's going to take a lot more time. You're going to need to track it and follow it, make sure, like, the company didn't blow up on their earnings, or the CEO didn't pass away, or something that is going to
Yeah.
affect the investment. With Bitcoin, you can just set it and forget it. And, you can take salary in Bitcoin if you want, like I did. And, I think that's a great way to do it. I recently, I announced an investment in Lava, full disclaimer, and you can get paid directly in Bitcoin with them. You can borrow against your stack with them. They have yield products, and I don't want to shill too much, but I think Lava is a great place to go for a lot of these things. And it's just important to start holding Bitcoin, and then just focus on your craft. Like, work for the next game, contract, just like focus on playing the sport that you love, which has been all that you've thought about for your entire life up to this point. And then let Bitcoin, take care of your future. And it really is that simple. And so that's what I tell my mates. They ask me about our 401k program and this and that. And I'm like, look, yeah, it matches 100%. You get the 100% match on the money that you put in. And so it can make sense to, like, contribute to that for a few years. And then when you leave the team, you can, like, take that retirement fund into your own hands.
Yep.
And so you can self-direct it and buy Bitcoin with that and benefit that way. But for the majority of guys, it's like, look, just buy Bitcoin, put on a recurring buy, and continue to grind. And it really, it really is that simple. And, obviously I'm vocal about my journey and what I decide to do, off the field with my finances. And I do that to educate, and also to share my story, to inspire guys. I've met other guys across the league who are like, dude, like, you getting paid in Bitcoin, like, that's crazy. Like, you're a beast. Like, let me ask you about this. And then, and then we get to talking, and, it just create relationships, and you have someone to lean on when an event like Friday happens, and, with 19 billion liquidations, and Bitcoin goes from 123 to 108, or maybe 102 on some
Yeah.
exchanges. And if you're new to Bitcoin, you're kind of looking out, right? So So being able to help people through that and ease their mind that like, look, the fundamentals haven't changed. This asset is here, and it's just taking the world a little bit of time to wake up to it.
Yeah, agreed. And I'd say this for people who are out there, if you can learn just a couple like real TA things, it will help you a lot. Like if you can understand moving averages, if you can understand bull market support bands, you're like, hey, every single time we've hit here, we've rebounded. If you can understand it, it'll give you a little bit more clarity of like, hey, why did this thing wick below this thing? And like, all these people are saying it took all these traders out and it took all the liquidity. I'm like, if you will spend a couple months just learning some very basic TA, it'll help clear up some of the just like the pain, like the pain and the chaos and the why is this happening kind of thing as well. So I would say from a practical standpoint out there for everyone who, if you're one of those people who you believe in Bitcoin, you understand it, but you don't really see the charts. In my opinion, I think it has aided my ability to sort of muster the ups and downs. I understand the assets. I'm at a point now, but it took a long time of conviction and like literally daily Bitcoin spaces for a year and a half, and I still will have a heart attack if Bitcoin goes to 45K. But because I understand the charts and I understand where certain levels are, I'm going to be paying attention to those. So I'm not going to be panicking at certain levels and panic selling. And so for people who are out there listening, I think that was excellent advice from Alex, because it can be that simple. And if you can stack extra skills in your department, extra knowledge base, like you mentioned, the career, especially in sports, it can be short. Now, if you're someone like Buffon and you're out here playing soccer till you're 50 or something like that, maybe it's different. But for a lot of people, that is the case. So listen, Alex, it's been an excellent conversation, man. I really enjoy speaking with you. I think there's a ton of alpha and a ton of wisdom you dropped, especially for people who are in the sports world. I hope a lot of sports people see this and see that there's another way to sort of, I don't know, this is like very new. Like this type of, like your move that you did rightfully kind of made some ripples in the sports world. So I hope more and more people see this. We're going to do what we can to kind of boost this conversation out there. But I appreciate you coming on. Is there any last things you want to leave us with, or things you're working on that you want us to be aware of, or the next game, or anything you want to shout out?
No, I think no, I think we covered a lot. There's so many resources out there now. There's really no excuse to not
Yeah.
at least starting to learn about this thing. So there's so many resources out there. I think the future is bright. I think we're going through an interesting time with a lot of competing factors, and so just be patient. Everything's going to be just fine. But but no, this was great. I appreciate you having me on. We'll have to do it again sometime, and you'll see me in your Twitter Spaces here soon. But
Let's go.
but yeah, San Antonio FC playing Orange County tonight. We're looking to spot in the playoffs. So I'm going to be rooting on the boys here in a couple hours, and hoping to get myself healthy and back on the field soon.
Dude, I can't wait. Yeah, best of luck on the health journey as well. Can't wait to see you back in the field. Now you have a new fan for the San Antonio games. I'll be tuning in to see you playing as well and to support the other guys in the team. Especially now that I know that some of them are Bitcoiners. So like we have to.
Oh, yeah.
Like, the Bitcoin community has got to start tuning into some of these games. So I think you've made some fans today.
Oh, I appreciate
All
it,
right.
Cade.
Yeah, man, absolutely. And for everyone back at home, please do repost the stream if you enjoyed it. I appreciate the people who did repost already. And be sure to give Alex a follow right above our faces if you're on X, right below our faces if you're on YouTube. We'll see you guys all the next one. We have spaces and streams every single day here at Wolf. So we got a lot more Bitcoin content coming at you. We'll see you guys all the next